Hey everybody, my name is Tom Sauceman. I'm with Honeybees. We're located just outside of St. Louis in the eastern part of Missouri. I wanted to do a small demonstration video today showing some of the newbies out there that may have just gotten their first nucleus colony, package, things like that, exactly how we prefer and how we suggest to people that you might go ahead and install on your first install right after you get your nucleus colony. Now, we actually happen to have a Pro Nuke here. There's a couple different styles of nucleus colonies, or the nucleus boxes that you'll see. Pro Nuke is one. The Easy Nuke, or the Easy Gesture Nuke, is another one. This is the one that we kind of prefer. But so basically, when you open this up, you're going to find that there's 5 full drawn frames inside here. At least a good three frames of brood, all good bee coverage within the colony itself. And then we're going to go ahead and introduce a couple of frames here. The type of frame that we prefer is a wooden frame with plastic foundation that has a good wax coating. I'm also happen to have some frames that had just a little bit of drawn wax from last year. I'm going to go ahead and give them one of those today. If you don't happen to have any drawn wax, foundation's fine. You can end up feeding, and we'll talk about that here just in a short bit in the video. So when you're actually walking up to your nucleus colony, we actually have all the equipment set up ready to go. Now you can see we have a hive stand here that's set, leveled, and these happen to be a solid bottom board, and everything that we run is an 8-frame box. So with the 5 frames that I have in here, I'll need an additional 3. If you're running 10-frame equipment, obviously you'll have 5 frames in here, you'll need an additional 5. So there's very little differences in the two. Obviously the 2 frames is about it, but by and large you would manage them pretty close to the same way. So when we actually come up to the colony, we already have our smoker lit. We already have our hives set in place and everything's ready to go. We already have a nucleus colony here in a stable position where it's not going to fall over or flip on us. And then when we start to open the colony up, we just put a couple puffs of smoke just in the back side there to let them know that we're here, maybe push them off the tops of the frames. So one other thing to be cautious of is occasionally you can see a little bit of drawn comb in here depending on how long they've been inside the Pro Nuke. And you just kind of scan very quickly to make sure that you don't have the queen in there. But typically as we come up to it, bounce the bees off into the bottom. What I like to actually put a couple puffs of smoke across the top side of the frames. This kind of moves them out of your way, because sometimes these Pro Nukes, depending on how fat the combs are and how much burr comb you see on top of these, you can tend to squash a few bees. That's going to happen. Most of the time I try to clean off any excess burr comb up there. Some of that stuff will get in the way. It'll allow you to roll bees, which is not always fun. It tends to cause them to be a little bit angry and anxious. And so we prefer to kind of clean them up just a little bit. So as you can see, as it sits in here, so there's actually some gaps in between here that they'll actually put some propolis in there. And that's always something that is a little bit challenging as you're trying to pull frames, because even this burr comb right here that connects the frames together, as you drag it up, it can roll bees. So I can try to do my best to spend just a little bit of time to pull some of that comb out of the way. And as you're pulling your first frame out, understand that it's going to be a little bit snug, and you want to pull it up slowly. At this point, we have no idea where the queen's at, which frame she's on. If she's on the inside, she's on the outside. So that's why I'm just taking my time here to actually pull up. So this one actually has a really nice, completely full frame of brood on that side. I don't see the queen on here. I'll give her a flip. Just another quick light inspection. You don't always have to find the queen. I happen to know that the queen in here is marked because I marked her myself. So again, just a quick scan. And another thing that I'm looking for on these frames that most people may not mention is, if you notice right here on the end bars here, this is one area that you want to pay close attention to, that when they build this propolis in there, you can actually scrape that off. Today is actually a pretty warm day, so I can spend a little bit of time making a few adjustments here if I need to. It's not a cold day, it's not a rainy day, it's not a windy day. It's probably high 60s, very, very low 70s out here today.
Why do you want to scrape that propolis off?
So what I'm looking for is actually, when you see these frames right here, these are called the end bars, here and here. You actually want those to touch. What happens is, when the foundation is, or the comb's drawn out on either side of this, you want the bees to have that roughly about 1/4 inch space inside there. so they don't draw these combs overly fat. So that way everything fits together nicely, and there's less of a chance of you actually squashing any bees when you put in. So there's just a little bit of propolis on the corners right there.
When you scrape that off, it allows you to push those frames closer together, right?
That's right. So there's many different ways that you can put them in here. Like I said, I've got 3 frames that mostly 3 frames are not drawn. I've got one here that has a comb on one side. So you can see when I scrape that off there, now my end bars can actually fit together. So that's really important as they start to draw the combs out in there. Again, that will keep you from squashing bees. Unfortunately, when you get in and do an inspection, it's likely that a couple of these are going to get squashed. The most important one, obviously, being the queen. You want to pay close attention. Now, one other thing that I want to point out here too, which may not seem like a big deal, as you're pulling out, you see I gave myself a little bit of extra room with that one frame coming out. I'm not pulling and dragging the frame coming up, going across. I'm trying to pull straight up with the frame until I clear, because it is possible, you can see there's some bees on the end bars. It's possible the queen could be there throughout the disruption of you actually moving the frames around. So the last thing you want to do, obviously, is roll the queen. That would really set you back. So there's a lot of bee coverage on these frames here. I'm actually just going to shake a few bees off of this just to minimize a little. I can get a better view down in the cells. It's going to be really, really difficult to see probably with the camera here. It's in the shade, but there's a little bit of milky white substance down the bottom. That tells me that there's some real young larvae that are down inside there. So I do a quick inspection, both sides of the frame. I'll take just 1 quick minute to go ahead, pull that off there, rotate this around, scrape that, flip it over. Okay, so now I got all 4 sides pretty well moved down. I haven't seen the queen yet. I'll go ahead and set it in there easily and then push it over.
And you're putting these frames in there the exact same position that you pulled them out of the nuke box, right?
Yeah, for the most part I am. Now I would point out that particularly in the very, very early spring, depending on how cool or cold it is, I probably wouldn't be separating the brood up here. You can see I left my one frame on the outside, but here what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm actually going to do what they call a checkerboarding method, where I'm going to push this frame that has a little bit of drawn comb over. One thing that I would point out is I never separate the brood, which is all the cappings in here underneath this, and even the open larvae there. I never separate it by more than 1 frame. So if I'm checkerboarding, I'm doing 1 empty, 1 drawn. And again, I know my temperatures here are really good moving forward, so I don't have to worry about separating the brood with not enough bee coverage. I don't have to worry about that chilling brood, because it is possible to set a colony back if it's really cold or you're having really, really chilly nights. It is possible that if you separate the brood too much and you don't have enough bee coverage, or it gets really cold, the bees will draw back to the center of the nest, leaving that outside brood exposed, and therefore it would be chilled. So it has to remain at about 94 degrees consistently.
And what's the low temperature you're looking for to
Well, I think
to
that
guide you there?
probably going to vary depending on who you ask. Again, our nights here are not getting down below really high 50s on the low side this time of year. We're actually in the early part of May now. Just doing another inspection of the frame. I can see a bunch of open larvae down there. A little bit older stuff here. Do a quick scrape of my end bars just so everything fits nicely. This is a really stout nuke. I would say with a nuke like this, if it wouldn't get moved over pretty quickly, I guarantee that this colony would be building swarm cells in here. If you need to do a closer inspection of the brood nest and you don't have too much bee coverage, you can lightly take the frame down there and just give it a little jiggle. That'll knock some of the bees off inside the box, and then that'll give you a closer inspection of the frames. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is taking the frame and throwing it down, because now you can actually take the little bees right there, and then when they hit the the top bars of the frames, it could potentially cause damage to them. So we're not trying to completely upset the colony inside here. I'm going to go ahead and checkerboard this frame in here. Now I have my last frame that I need to move over. Still haven't seen the queen. I'm not particularly worried that I do see her. I've seen evidence that a queen is in here because I've seen that very, very young larvae, and I've seen eggs. So we know that an egg is only an egg for up to 3 days, and after that part it hatches into a young larvae and they start to feed it.
But there's our queen.
She was already marked with the blue dot. So she's on the outside frame. I want to be cautious not to bang her off there, squash her as I'm kind of cleaning these end bars up a little bit. Another thing that you'll notice too, don't be concerned with it. Some people think that I get calls and questions. People are like, oh, I think I see, swarm cells. And I know that sometimes particular beginner beekeepers can be very conscious about that, thinking that they're going to swarm or have some sort of an issue. But a lot of times when they get kind of built out like that, you'll see things like this where they're building this burr comb on the top of the frames. They'll just build it out a little fatter. They'll do the same thing on the bottom bars. This is stuff that you can save if you want to. If you're a person that does
Wax rendering.
yeah, you can see that they're actually covering all this brood. This was the outside frame here. You can see they're covering all this brood, keeping it warm. So the bee coverage inside here is amazing. Again, there's our queen. I'm going to go ahead and put her to the inside, being conscious that I know when I put them down in there and move it over, that she is on that frame, so I want to be gentle. Last thing is getting the rest of the bees out of the inside of the produce box. If you hadn't found the queen there, I'd be inspecting the inside. Most of the time she'll be on a comb, but sometimes throughout the disruption, she may decide to come off and hide on the wall. Give it a nice tap, knock them out of the box. I'm done with this. You can see a little fanning going on top of the frames. It's a little bit of disruption. Obviously, there's some new smells inside there. It doesn't smell exactly like their home, probably for the new wood and stuff that's in there, but we'll just give them a couple light puffs of smoke, push them down. We know the queen's in there. Everything in the colony looks right and looks healthy. The only other thing that I want to do at this point in time, if you're not under a heavy nectar flow, meaning you don't have multiple plant sources that are actually producing nectar, I would highly recommend, and I would probably recommend this anyway, you can always start with some sugar syrup. And Melissa and I, we like to feed real sugar, sucrose. Some people choose to feed high fructose corn syrup, and that's fine. Melissa and I just choose to feed real sugar syrup. If I can get all these girls inside the box. There's many different feeders that you can use. And I'll tell you, they all have their pros and cons. So everybody may have their own favorite. You can use a frame feeder that goes in there, which is called a division board feeder. And there's multiple different manufacturers out there and makes. My favorite happens to be the Motherlode brand, and we do use those. And we use them for certain times when we're making nukes and stuff. We'll use them a lot then. This is a brand that I really like. Again, there's many different brands out there. This is called a top feeder. This one's made by Saracell. It's out in New Zealand. This one's really nice. It's really robust. You can feed in 4 corners and the center. They're made of a really heavy plastic and pretty durable. Unfortunately, I cracked this one. But what I would do at this point in time, and I didn't bring it with me today, this will hold, I think, maybe 2.5 gallons roughly. Don't quote me on it. But then what I would do is I would probably go ahead and give this colony at least 1 gallon of sugar syrup at a 1-to-1 ratio. That is by weight, not by volume. So you're going to do basically 1 pound per 1 pound. So if you mixed up basically about 7 to 8 pounds of sugar per 1 gallon of water, that's going to get you about where you need to be. There's also some calculators online. If you're not good at figuring out those ratios, you can go online and Google search those and find those. But what I would do is I would go ahead and start with 1 gallon of sugar syrup right now, and then I'd come back in 1 week exactly give or take, I guess, if you can't get to it. Come back in 1 week and I would do an inspection of the hive at that point in time. I would make sure that all my larvae looks good, nice pearly white, it looks nice and milky, it's not dry. Make sure I still see eggs in there. I don't particularly care if I see the queen. I know sometimes people are really infatuated with finding the queen, and sometimes you can do more harm than good, in my opinion, by constantly keeping the hive open, moving frames around, pulling them in and out. That's more of a chance that you can really disrupt the colony a lot. I just look for eggs. If I found eggs within the colony, I know that there was a queen present there less than 3 days ago. That's sufficient for me. I make sure everything looks right, the activity is good in the front of the entrance, and they have plenty of food at that point in time. If they've consumed after that first week that 1 gallon of sugar syrup, I'm going to give them another gallon at that point, and I'm going to continue to do so until I get my bottom box more than 80% filled out. At that point in time, if you're managing with the double brood box style, I would add my second box to that at that point in time. And again, as long as your temperatures are very good throughout the daytime and night, meaning probably above 50 or 60 degrees, I wouldn't have a problem when I add my second box to bring a couple of those frames of resources, maybe some brood in there, bring them up top, and then I would put my other frames in. That'll force the bees to kind of move up and use that space and start to occupy that second box. If you're choosing to do it in a single box, that's fine. At that point in time, once you built it out, you'd want to add your honey supers in and move forward from there. So this is just kind of a basic install video, just showing you guys how we prefer to install Nucleus colonies into an 8-frame box. Again, 10 frames is not much different, but I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope this video was really informational for you. Thanks a lot and have a great day.